Hey, Stu here from UAVfutures, and today, well, this one's going out to you fans. You guys asked for it. You wanted another build video, and I wanted to show you guys something special. We've put in the hard work, we've shopped around, and today I'm super excited of announcing this is the 100 mile per hour. Let me say that again. 100 miles per hour FPV racing drone that's coming in at around $170. Now, when you look at the performance of the price, this thing is absolutely off the chain. And what we're going to be doing, I'm going to be showing you how to build this thing in an easy step-by-step guide. It's never been easier. We're going to be sticking it on the bench, taking it from parts all the way up to a finished drone that you can take out and rip around. Now, if you're wondering what the performance is like, well, just check this out. And it is an absolute speed monster like you've never seen before.
115! Yip, 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 yip.
If you're wanting to get into FPV drone racing, definitely this is going to be the video for you, because I'm going to be showing you how to build one of these races easy, step by step, for a fantastic price. And honestly, if you take this thing to a race course and you've got the skills to pay the bills, this thing will almost be unbeatable, because this thing, its performance is right up there with like the $500 US drones. This thing is absolutely crazy. Now you can see I've got two in my hands because I'm going to be showing you guys a variety of parts. So if something's sold out, these things, they're so easy nowadays. It's mix and match with the parts. So I'm going to be showing you two alternate builds. One can take a 5S battery, one can take a 4S battery. Both of these things are going to be super quick, and on top of that, I'm going to be giving one of these away. So the official rules will be down in the description down below, but definitely make sure you like and subscribe and leave a comment on this video. Hit that bell notification, all that sort of good stuff. But I'm pretty excited because look, one of you guys, one of you viewers, I'm going to be shipping one of these off to you because they're so much fun and I just can't wait to share it with you guys. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's stick this bad boy on the bench. We'll show you what it comes like, then we'll jump in and have a look at all the parts and get started with the build. All right, let's do it. Alrighty, so here they are on the bench, and you might be thinking, Stuart, they look amazing, but is that pretty complex? Because I'm not sure how I'm feeling about building this thing. I don't have too much confidence or soldering experience. Well, fear not. I'm telling you, these things are so easy to put together, and this guide, the step-by-step process, it's going to be simple. Everybody can do it. No matter if you're a complete beginner or a pro, you're going to be able to build one of these things, no sweat. Now, what we've got here, you can see I've got two versions, not only because I want to give one away. We've got the 5S version, we've got the 4S version, but both of these things, they're going to be going over 100 miles per hour. They're going to absolutely rip. They're going to be so fast. Honestly, these are top-tier professional racers. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to jump back in time, have a look at the individual parts, and everything I talk about will be linked down below, because honestly, from the frame, the motors, everything will be linked down below with a whole ton of extras as well, because you might find you want some different motors, or you might even want a different shape frame. That's all going to be there. Everything will be linked down below that you can go and check out and find out and build the exact quadcopter that's going to be right for your need. Anyway, what we should do, let's jump in, have a look at these builds in the parts, and get started with putting these easy 100 mile per hour quads together. All right, let's check it out, go back in time and see what the parts look like when they're all separate in 3, 2, 1. Radio, so here it is, broken down into its state before we've put it together. Thanks very much, editing. And you might be thinking, Stuart, that doesn't look like too much. And yep, you'd be absolutely correct. Nowadays, there's not too many components whatsoever. It is so simple to put together. So if you're looking to get into this hobby, you want an amazing drone that goes super quick, really robust, and also is pretty easy to build, look no further, because it's never been a better time to jump in and get started. Now, on the left of the screen here, I'm going to put a little checklist of something every drone is going to need. So they're all going to need a camera, they're all going to need a frame, they're all going to need electronic speed controllers, which are the things that control your motors. You're going to need some motors, a propeller, a flight controller which tells it what to do, an antenna. That's it. And we used to have stuff all over the screen back in the day, all over the bench, but nowadays all the components have really shrunk down, and it's pretty much plug and play. It's never been as easy as this. Now, before we jump in and talk about each of these individual components and why we chose them, remember, everything is linked down below. And look, I'm going to say right now, a lot of this stuff might be out of stock. Go and check, but I know these videos can be very popular, so I'm going to put a whole bunch of links down below to lots and lots of different parts, because so many stuff of this drone racing things, all these parts will be compatible. You can mix and match as many as you like and build the quadcopter that's right up to your specs. Anyway, let's jump in and have a look at the actual build itself. So in the middle, our base of our build, what we're going to be using, our frame, this is the Furious X220. The reason I chose this is because look, it's got an amazing profile. It should slice through the air. You can see the arms there. They're quite thin as they're going to cut through. It's not going to have very much drag, but on the flip side of that, they're also quite thick in terms of how thick the actual carbon is. It has some 6mm arms, which means this thing thing is going to be very, very robust. It's going to be very hard to break. I've actually never had a quad with 6mm arms before. Now on the front here, we've got our standard HS1177. This is pretty much the gold standard, the camera that shaped our industry, made everything conform to one sort of standard size. I'm a big fan of these, and for the price, I think this thing is like $17 or something like that. Check the link below. That thing is an absolute steal. Now this is where things get a little bit different, because this side is rated for 5S and this side is rated for 4S. And if you're new to the hobby, you might be thinking, well, what does that mean? A 5S is like for some flat out insanity speed. I'm going to tell you right now, that's going to be faster than most pilots in the world can handle. I don't even really fly 5S. Most of my flights are all on 4S. 99% of my drones are 4S drones. So look, there's nothing wrong with 4S, but I thought, well, why not? Let's build one that is 5S capable for those people who just want just that extra little bit of, I guess, insanity. Now we'll get the powertrains and propulsion systems out of the way. So the two propellers I recommend, you know, some ones I'm big fans of. I've got our Dell Cyclones, which are tried and tested, and we've also got the Avans, which go really well with these motors as well on the 4S version. So I'll link both of those down below. Then underneath, you'd be mistaken for thinking, Stuart, looks like you got the same motor on there. That's not true. They're both purple. They're both from BrotherHobby. The 5S version, it's going to be rocking the Returner R4s, which are the 2205, 2450 kV version, and that's going to be good because we're going to be rocking a 5S on this. These ones are a little bit heavier too, but we sort of need that to compensate for the extra voltage we're going to be putting through it. This one over on the 4S side, this is just the R2, 2205, 2600 kV, so a little bit of a higher kV motor, and also a little bit lighter as well. So that's, you know, keeping the weight down is something that makes our quads go very, very quick. So with that out of the way, you can see there's really only two more things to put in here. On the 5S version, this is where we've got our 35 amp ESC, and on top of that, this is part of the eSheen stack. These will be linked down below. These are super cheap at the moment, actually. And then on top of that, we've also got our eSheen F4 flight controller. So this is our flight controller built in with our VTX. So you notice it looks a little bit different over to this side, because this one's got our built-in VTX in there, which is fantastic. Means you don't have to buy an extra component. And then also, it does come with an extra different antenna. What I'm going to recommend is one of these little whips as well. That'll be in the description down below. That's just going to help reduce the weight, and I think that's going to be perfect for this sort of light, very fast build. Now on the 4S side of things, this is where we've sort of gone a little bit different, and I wanted to do things differently because I wanted to show you, look, you can mix and match components. You can sort of pick and choose and find out what's going to be right for you. This one's gone things a little bit differently. So this is our flight controller and also our ESC. This one only takes a 4S, which is why this side is the 4S version, and you can see it's very different to this one, because this one you can see its ESC was standalone and they've merged the flight controller and the VTX, and this one they've merged the flight controller and the ESC together, and you can see it's a 30 amp 4-in-1 ESC, and then we've had to put in our VTX separately, so we're putting in the little eSheen VXT03s. Now of course, like all things, the prices fluctuate, they go up and down, new things come out, things go out of stock, all that sort of stuff. I'll link a whole bunch of options down below, but when I put this together, this 5S version was coming in at about $185, and the 4S version, it was coming in at about $182. So there's really not too much difference there. One of the biggest differences over this side, these components are a little bit cheaper than these ones, and these motors are a little bit more expensive than these ones. And if you wanted to go the sort of base version and get everything in here as cheap as possible, what I've got, it's coming in at about $170, which is absolutely ridiculous when you think this quad is going to be going over 100 miles per hour. And then finally, look, this one might not be for everyone, but I highly recommend it. We've got a GoPro holder here, so we're going to be attaching a GoPro to get some nice juicy HD footage. That's an injection molded mount, and it's only coming in at $5 as well. I'll link that down below. But yeah, that one I can't recommend enough, because for $5 you're going to get some awesome footage. Alright, so that's it. That's enough rambling about the parts. Let's get stuck in. Let's jump in. I'm going to show you guys step by step and just how easy it is to build for about $180 a quad that's going to go over 100 miles per hour. Alright, let's do it. Alrighty, so the first thing we need to do, we need to actually put our frame together. So if you're like me and you've got the Furious 220, you're going to need to put it together, but there's going to be some others out there too, you know, like this one. This is the GEP KX5. I'm going to link this in the description down below. You might have chosen a frame that's already got the base plate sort of put together, so that's one little time saver. If you don't want to do this too much, there are some other frames that come as just one universal body plate. Now what we need to do, the first thing here, all we're going to simply do is make up our base version, and we're going to get it looking like this. So all we need to do, we're going to screw it down. You're going to put the arms on. You've got some little screws here. You are going to get some other parts. We're not going to worry with any of that part at the moment. All you're going to need is these little screws here. So let's open these up, get these out, and then what you're going to do through each of these holes, it's going to be a little bit fiddly, you know, so maybe use a bit of tape on the back if you're getting stuck. Essentially what you need to do is put 2 bolts through, put your arm on, There we go, and then you're going to put the other part on the top like that. Except the tricky part, or the fiddly part, you need to sort of do that all at once. So you might need to call in an extra pair of hands or use a bit of tape to hold it down. But essentially what you want to do is make sure you've got all 4 arms in there with the little bolts sticking out the top, and then what you're going to do, you're going to tighten down these ones right here, so just the outside, but leave these ones in the middle, because this is where we're going to put on our little spacers, which are actually in this little bag. These little spacers are right here. We're going to screw that on as well. So essentially, that's one arm done. Now you might find it a little bit easier if you just want to do it one at a time, slide them in, screw it through, and we'll cut back and see what it looks like when we've got all 4 done. So let's check that out in 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, so that was pretty easy. It took about 30 seconds. I've got the 5S version here, the 4S version I'm going to be building here. 2 frames, identical. What we need to do now is attach our motors. So they're pretty self-explanatory. You've got these holes right here. You can line them up, put them on. Now what I do recommend, when you're tightening down, use a little bit of Loctite, because that's going to stop them coming loose and some hard crashes and vibrations and stuff like that. So that's a nice little tip. If you got some of this stuff, use it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to screw down the R4s on the 5S version and put the R2s on the 4S version. So let's use another little cut and see what that looks like. Save you guys some time. There we go. Very straightforward stuff. You can see I've got all my motors on, so 4 motors, 1 per arm. And now we've got some of these untidy wires. What we're going to do now, our next job, is to put in like where we're going to connect up our power, all that sort of stuff. So our 4-in-1 ESC. Now on the 5S version, this was where we've got this stack right here. So we're going to be putting that one right there. That's the 35 amp ESC that can take a 5S, 6S even. And then over here, this is where we've got a Racer Star one. So we're going to be putting this in. So remember, these are linked down below, but that's what they're going to go on those 4 little standoffs that we screwed in before. So nice and snug. You can see they're made to fit. And then what we're going to be doing is connecting up each one of our motors to each one of our motor wires to one of these little pads right here. Alrighty, so I've zoomed in a little bit here so we can see a little bit more easily. And what we're going to be doing, we're going to be tinning our pads. And that means that's all these little gold parts you can see on the outside right here. I've already done 2 right here, and that means we just hit it with a little bit of solder. And the reason that we do that is because it makes it so easy then in the future, just simply connect up our motor wires. They're going to merge together, and it's going to result in a really nice clean little solder joint. Now if you're a little bit worried about soldering, fear not. I'm going to leave a little link up here. A card should flash up. Go watch that. That's all my soldering tips for quadcopters, so everything that you need to know. Anyway, it's pretty easy, so let's go ahead now. We're going to tin up all these little pads around the outside. So you put a little bit of solder on the end of your soldering iron, and then you just get in and out as quickly as you can. You don't want to be waiting around there for a long time, so in and out, in and out. So you can see I've done the first 3 there, so we're going to continue and do that. Also remember to do these ones at the back too. That's where we're going to be putting our battery. So that's all done on the 5S version. We're going to do the same to this one right here, but we've also got some extra little pads at the front as well. You can see we've got a couple across the front. We're going to also be tinning those up as well, because we're going to need that on this version to be hooking up our camera. Alright, so let's cut to what that looks like. We'll save you guys a bit of time and see what that looks like when that one's all done as well. So that's all done, ready to rock and roll, pre-tinned. What we need to do now, we're going to be cutting our motor wires and then soldering them up to each one of these. So you can see each one of these 4-in-1 ESCs, there's actually 4 individual ESCs in here, has 3 separate tabs. So this is for motors 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you simply need to connect up your 3 motor wires to those 3 tabs. Now I recommend doing this one at a time so you can make sure that it's the correct length. So what we're going to do, I'm simply going to hold it. Remember to run it along the arm, put it over the top and see just how much length. Give it a little bit of a pinch, and then that's about where you should cut. So I'm going to cut that one right there. That's looking good, and then this one needs to go to tab number 2, so I'm going to do the same to tab number 2, this one to tab number 3, so on and so on. So we're going to go through, I know it sounds a little bit scary, but we're going to go through, cut all the wires, and then see what it looks like after that. It's going to look a lot cleaner. So I've cut all my wires, it's looking a little bit neater. Don't throw the parts that you've cut off, because we're going to be using them in a little bit as well. We need those for the rest of our build. But a good little tip I want to give you guys as well, when you're doing it, there's sort of 2 ways. You can either run it directly like that, or if what you want to do is take it up, I've done it on this side, you can take it up, imagine it's going to be going around this standoff and then connecting from the back. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but one way is a little bit neater than the other. So the choice is yours. It's still going to fly perfectly fine. It's just if you care about those little looks of it looking neat or not. So with the board tinned, our motor wires cut, what we need to do now, we're just going to strip the ends. So just take off a little bit of wire, leaving about 1 or 2 mils exposed on the end. We're going to do that for all of our wires, and then what we need to do, we need to tin these almost the exact same the way that we tin these. So simply get your soldering iron, touch it to the wire, nice and quick, get in and out, and put a little bit of solder on there as well. And the reason we do that, we tin it up so it's all pre-tinned, so when we put these 2 together, they join very, very easily. So I'm going to go around now, strip all the ends, put a little bit of tinning on, and then we're going to actually solder our motor wires down to our board. Alrighty, so all the ends have been stripped, we've tinned our wires, and now they're ready to hook up to our main board. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see exactly what we're doing. And if you're worried about which motor wire you're going to hook up to which pad, don't stress too much. As long as you get the motor wire to the same 3 on the ESC, you're going to be fine, because all that happens, all that does is determine the direction of the motor, and you can change that in the software later. I'll leave some links down below, or if you really want to do it without diving into your computer too much, you can simply switch over any 2 of the wires. So if you've got 1 to 1, 2 to 2, and 3 to 3, you just simply got to cross them over, and then it would reverse the direction of the motor. So I'm going to go ahead and solder this one up now. Also, to a good little tip, we're going to be using these standoffs in a little bit too, so make sure none of your wires are getting in the way that's going to stop you screwing something on there. Make sure they're well clear of that little standoff. Alright, so that's one motor done. What we should do, we're going to go through, do all the motors, solder them all up. We'll also do the same on the 4S build and then get on with it. Rightio, so they're all soldered down. You can see the difference between when you do it really neat and you're coming in from the outside versus this way. You know, if you just gone straight up there, it's still going to fly fine. Try to avoid them just coming straight out, because then they might get snagged a little bit more if you hit a tree or something like that. But look, it's still going to fly great. But if you can, and you know, a little bit more confident with soldering, see if you can loop them around like this. Just make sure you leave enough room so you can screw these standoffs in there as well, because that's really important to our next step, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to screw these little standoffs. So let's do that and then get on with the build. Alrighty, so I've put the standoffs on. You can see they're starting to look like a quad now, and what if I told you, like, honestly, that's over half the soldering done. We're almost there. We just need to put in a VTX on this one and our flight controller on this one, and then we're ready to rock and roll. So they are so easy to build nowadays. One little pro tip I am going to recommend, if you've got some little electrical tape handy, simply tie these down. You know, you can put a zip tie or something like that. I like to tie mine down with a bit of electrical tape, and that's just going to stop the wires coming up and getting clipped by the props in an unfortunate way, or getting snagged by a tree or something like that. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to move on to putting in our XT60, hooking up our battery connector. Now when it comes to putting the battery lead on, it is really simple, and you might have got some of this sort of wire when you bought your little kits, you know, if you bought this ESC or this one, but I'll link some other wire down below. If you're looking at an ESC that I've linked somewhere, or a flight controller, if you don't have any of this stuff, I'll put a link down below. It's only going to cost a few dollars anyway. Now this is a pretty easy solder joint because we've already tinned the back. You can see right here on both of these. What we need to do, we need to hook up our positive to our positive, our ground to our ground, and then whatever battery connection you want to use on the end. Now I'm going to be using XT60s because that's what all my drones use, and I would say that is probably the most popular drone choice out there to use an XT60. So let's have a look at how we set up our XT60 connector. Now this is the XT60 here that I'm going to use. It's going to be the same for both of our builds, very similar, but this thing used to drive me crazy before I knew how to do it. So I'm going to show you some tips to make it from one of the hardest solder joints to one of the easiest ones we have to do. So all you do, put it on a bit of blue tack or something to hold it upright like that. Then all we do with our soldering iron, fill the thing full of lead, and we'll do the other side as well. Just like that. And then the exact same process like we did, we take our wire, make sure you've got your ground to your ground and your positive to your positive. I always remember the positive is the flat side, and what you do, you simply sit your wire on there and then merge them together. So very simple. There's one, then here's where we're going to do number 2. Alrighty, look at that joint, nice and shiny, very strong. Now if you've got some heat shrink around as well, I'd recommend just putting that on, because that's going to help those little connectors. You can pick that up at like any local hardware store, that sort of stuff. So we're going to put that on, shrink that down, and then the process is exactly the same when it comes to hooking this up to this. Just make sure that you're putting your positive to your positive, which in this case is this one, and your ground to your ground. So you sit them on and then merge them. A very simple, easy process. There's one. And there's 2. So we've done the 5S version, let's do the same to the 4S version and then continue with our build. Alrighty, so they're all hooked up, I'm ready to rock and roll, and I've got to say that's the hardest part done. Now all we need to do is attach our FPV sort of system. So we're going to be putting in our FPV camera and also our VTX. Now this is where our builds differ a little bit because these components are spaced out a little bit differently. This one's already got the flight controller built in, and we just need to put in the VTX and the camera. This one on the other hand, its flight controller is actually built in with the VTX that I've got here. It's not actually obviously in the ESC pad, and then we've still got to put the same camera in the front. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to do the 5S version first very quickly, and then we'll jump over and I'll show you how to wire up the 4S version as well, because the processors are a little bit different. But that's a great thing about this video. You can use these skills, what you learn, you can see, gee, it's not that hard, a very similar process, you just go about things a little bit differently. Anyway, let's jump over, zoom in, and have a look at the 5S one. Alright, so you guys aren't going to believe how simple this is. The beauty about this one, you know, this stack, it's our flight controller and our VTX, and it is so easy to hook up. So what I've done, save you guys a bit of time, this is just some of the wire that I've cut off the motor wires. What I'm going to do, I'm simply going to strip it down a little bit to about this length, about 1 inch long, tin both ends, and then we're going to hook it up and straight to our board. So let's go ahead and tin these now. And then what I'm going to do, let's zoom in here a little bit more so we can see exactly what we're doing. Now essentially what we're going to do, we're going to be jumping straight off these pads just here. So I'm going to connect up a little wire. It doesn't matter about the colors, so we're going to need one for our positive, which is this one, which I'm going to add right here. And these are the wires we're going to use. It's going to power our flight controller. Alright, so I've got my little wires connected. Remember, this one's our positive, this one's our ground. It's really important we don't get these mixed up because we don't want to reverse our polarity, because look, that could cause bad things to happen. Now what we're going to do, we're going to be sitting our flight controller on here. So on this one, make sure this little arrow is pointing towards the front of your craft. That's going to make setting it up a little bit easier. And then all we need to do, you've got two little pads right here where it says battery and ground. We're going to put a little bit of solder on top of those little pads. And then you guys guessed it, all we need to do is hook up our ground to our ground. So actually what you might want to do is just screw these down while you're waiting to, it's going to stop it moving around. So I'm going to do that. That's better. I've just put two little screws on the top here. But anyway, so let's put our ground to our ground. And then the same, we'll put our positive to our battery right there, to our positive. Alrighty, so that's looking pretty good. And believe it or not, we're almost ready. All we need to do is put in our camera. Okie dokie, so that's all looking good right there. Now remember, this is the antenna that I recommended. That'll be linked down below. That simply clips on right here, but otherwise, this is going to be what you get, and you're going to need to buy an external antenna anyway. So I'm going to recommend, save a bit of weight, just put one of these little whips on here as well. So let's clip that on. And then I would recommend at the end when we're finished, we're going to put a little bit of hot glue over this just so it doesn't come undone and it's nice and sturdy. Now what we need to do, we're going to unscrew it again because look, it was used for holding it down, and we're just going to plug it in together because that's the beauty. Plug this little port in the front, the other one into the side. There's no other way you can get it around the wrong way. It only goes in one way and it fits nicely. Slide it back on. We're pretty much ready to rock and roll. So that's it, except for our FPV camera. Now attaching our FPV camera is super simple. What we're going to do, we're going to be using this. This is the HS1177. This is a fantastic camera, but I'm going to link some others down below too. Like you can put Runcam Swifts, a whole bunch in here. If you want to save even more weight, you can put one of these little bad boys in. But this thing, honestly, for the price is absolutely unbeatable at the moment. For like the $17 or $18, you definitely can't go wrong with that. And it's never been so easy. All we're going to do, we're going to trim this about, I guess, let's give ourselves maybe the length of the quad, so about that long. We're going to snip it. Then we're going to do the same how we pre-tin the wires, so I'm going to save you guys a bit of time, and we're going to cut to when these wires all are stripped and have a little bit of tin on the end. So let's cut to what that looks like in 3, 2, 1. Boop. Right, so I've tinned those up. All we need to do, we just simply need to connect them to these little pads right here. So the top one's our video, the middle one's our voltage, and the bottom one's our ground, and that's exactly what we've got here. So the top one's going to be video, red one is our voltage in the middle, and ground. So they're these three little back pads. And I'm going to say, don't do it this way because you don't want to have to bend your wires over. Do it so they're facing flat across the top of the board. So I'm going to go ahead and solder those up now, the exact same way that we put these two little top ones on. But you guys should be a bit of an expert at this now because you've already done all your motor joints, all that sort of stuff. So we're just going to solder these little ones on, and then believe it or not, we're pretty much almost done. So with that all done, the only other bit of soldering you're going to need to do is over here on some connections, and that's going to be for your receiver, but we're going to cover that in a part 2 video because honestly, and I'll probably link that part 2 video up here somewhere, because honestly, everybody's got different radios, different receivers, all that sort of jazz. I don't want to go through all the programming, everything like that, but as far as building the build, this is all we need to do before adding our receiver. Then we're simply going to plug our FPV camera in right here. And then that's it. That's all of our electronics ready to rock and roll. So we've got a little bit more work to do. So let's jump over, have a look at the 4S version, and then we'll be wrapping it up. And that's just how easy it is to build one of these monsters. Alrighty, over here on the 4S build, and this one's very similar to what we did on the 5S. You can see I've done the same stuff to my little camera cable that we did on the 5S version. We're simply going to hook that up first, but this one actually plugs into the front, or I should say solders into the front. So we've got a few pads across the front. There's video in, and that's where we need to hook up our camera. So we're going to solder that one in right here. That one's on sort of the front middle right, and then we've got one that says ground, and then we're going to jump over one, and that's where we've got our 5-volt rail over here. So that's where we need to solder these up to as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Excuse my head if it's in the way. It's just a little bit of a tight space in there. This is probably the trickiest part of the build right here for beginners. So there's my voltage in. Next to that we're going to do our ground. And then we're also going to do our 5-volt. Now this one might be a little bit hidden, so sorry about that if my head's in the way. Okie dokie, so there we go. You can see I've soldered those up to these little pads right here. They're very clearly labelled, and that's all we need to do now is attach our VTX, which is this little bad boy right here. Now the VTX I'm going to be using in this build, this is just the little Eachine VTX03, and the reason I'm choosing this one is because look, it's cheap and it's super light. Now one I really would recommend, I'll leave a link somewhere too to this one, everything will be linked down below, but this is the Maytech board. This one requires a little bit more soldering, but I'm a big fan of this one. You can also hook up smart audio. This one's going to fit very, very nicely on your build. You can just imagine how good that's going to look on there. But we're going to persist, use this little $10 bad boy, and trust me, you're still going to get the same range and the same FPV experience using this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this, and I know a lot of people who fly around with this. They've built this on my $99 build, and I like this VTX a lot. Anyway, let's get on with it. Now the first thing we're going to be doing, we're going to be cutting these wires at the front, so we're going to be not using any plugs, and then we need to get rid of pretty much all these wires except for that yellow one, because that's the one where we're going to be getting our video, so I'm going to be cutting those off. And then I'm just going to cut the yellow one down about here because you want the yellow one to be a little bit longer. Rightio. So that's done. Now what we're going to do, I am going to put a little bit of heat shrink, especially over this voltage wire right here, because I don't want any shorts or anything like that. You know, you could use a bit of electrical tape, even some hot glue if you wanted to hot glue it down, you know, just so it's out of the way, because that's going to be a bit of a live wire if it's getting loose. And even though it's got some silicone on it at the moment, you just want to take that little precaution. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alrighty, so you can see I've turned my wire green with the magic of putting some heat shrink over. I've shrunk it down. Now that's going to stop any shorts. Now what we're going to do, I'm simply going to strip the ends of these wires just like we've done with all the others. So we're going to strip that and then also strip this little yellow one as well, tin it up, and then we're ready to do our final bit of soldering. So let's cut to what that looks like when it's all pre-tinned. Alright, so that's all ready to rock and roll. Now what we're going to do, this part, look, it's a little bit tricky. We're going to put the video wire in first. So that one's right here, so where it says video out or VO, so we're going to just tap that on. And then this is where probably it's going to be the trickiest. We need to put these wires on top of those other ones that are already there. So this black one, this ground, is going to be soldered to that ground, and this red is going to be soldered to that red positive wire there. There's one. And there's two. Alrighty, so believe it or not, that's actually it for our soldering. Now in the part 2, like I mentioned before, this is where we're going to be hooking up our receiver to this one. So these little pads are right here, but that's going to be in the part 2 video because that part, it's different for everybody's radio, and I want to do a full comprehensive guide there as well. Anyway, so we can plug our camera in right now, and then believe it or not, that's actually it for our electronics. Now the fun part, we can put it together and then take it out and rip it around. Alrighty, so I've got both my builds on the bench, the 5S, the 4S, they're ready to rock and roll. All the soldering's done. We will need to put our receivers in, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut to what they look like when they're all sort of put together, because that's going to be much easier than saying put this plate here, strap this down. It's going to be much easier to show you. Rightio, here they are in their finished state, and honestly, aren't they things of beauty? After that little bit of soldering work, which really, when you think about it, wasn't that difficult, the other parts, like clicking them together, they sort of go together like Lego. It's amazing just how easily these things go together nowadays. Now, a few little things I did here and there I want to show you when I was putting it together to just make it that little bit more refined. So number one, you can see I've put a little bit of hot glue on my wires. So I'll flash a picture on the screen, and the reason I've done that, you know, to hold down not only the antennas, but also those little wires, stop some breaking off and some little vibrations and things like that. Number two, on the 5S version, I didn't really have to do too much, you know, there was really, the only other part I did was I zip tied down our little XT60 lead, and I will have to heat shrink those little parts on the connectors, but yeah, just put a little zip tie there. And the reason we've done that and left it long is so when we plug in a battery, like this battery here per se, we can actually put it in backwards, have our wires connecting on the side, and that's much better to have it like that. Otherwise, if they were both coming out the back like this is, you know, a mistake a lot of new pilots make. Sometimes all these bits, it's all together, it can actually get up into the props and get cut. So just put a little zip tie on the end. I've done that on both of the builds actually, so that's fine. The other part you'll notice as well, on the 4S version, I put a little bit of clear heat shrink over the little VTX and zip tied it down to the top of the frame, and then just ran the antenna out the back and put a little zip tie down as well. This one didn't need to do that because I've got it hot glued down, so that one's going to be fine. And I'd recommend to do that with this one as well, because look, that means it's not going to get ripped off anytime soon. Now, when it came to actually installing the cameras, though, all you had to do, you simply click the little side plates in, screwed in those little screws, and then that's going to allow you to adjust your tilt angle as well. So that part was pretty straightforward. The props, on the other hand, look, it might be a little bit confusing, but essentially the way we're going to be running ours, I'll flip ours around actually, it'll make it easier for me. So it'll be the same on the 4S version as well, but they do have different props on there, but I'll let you choose which one you like. Anyway, so we've got here, this is motor number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we want this one to be spinning clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise. So that's the way they're going to be going. And a good way to remember it is it's always running into the center of the frame from the end. So, you know, these two are going to be going that way, and these ones are going to be coming down like this. So that's the way I remember it anyway. Now, if your motors aren't spinning the correct way, remember, like I mentioned before, all you've got to do is swap over any two of these wires. That's how it's going to change direction. So that's part's pretty straightforward. And it'll also show you in, I guess, the part 2 video guide where we go through all the programming and stuff. I'll show you can also do it in the software if you're not having any luck that way. Probably what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be putting my little GoPro holder on the tops right here, so this will be linked down somewhere below. So if you want to get some of that nice juicy HD footage, I'm simply just going to be zip tying that down as well. So that's how it's going to look when it's on top of that. And you know, that's up to you. If you don't own a GoPro, of course you don't want to get that part, but yeah, that's how I'm going to be recording some really nice HD footage. Now, the only other thing we really need to do, of course, we need to put our receiver in, but that's in the part 2 part, depending on what sort of radio and receiver you're using. But we do need to put our little Velcro strap in. If you got this frame, it would have come with one. I'm going to be putting in one of my special UAVfutures one. There'll be some links down below to how you can sort of find one of them. So shout out to my Patreon supporters. So I'm going to be putting this in here, and then all we're going to need to do, put a battery on, and then just punch a hole in the sky and see some crazy speeds. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my UAVfutures 100 mile per hour build, and honestly, it is so easy to get together, get flying, and with a little bit of solder practice, you guys are going to be ripping one of these things around over 100 miles per hour. So I can't wait to see yours. Drop those comments down below, because remember, I am giving one of these away. Whether you want the 4S version, whether you want the 5S version, one of those is going to be going out to one of you viewers, and everything I talk about too, it's going to be linked down in the description below with a whole bunch of parts. So if one thing sold out, remember, you can change the frame, change the motors, all that sort of stuff. That's the beauty about these builds nowadays, and the beauty about these drones. You can mix and match the components to suit your needs. Also, the part 2 guide, how to put the receiver in and program your drone. If you're interested in that, that'll be down in there below. Anyway, enough rambling here in the studio. Let's jump out, let's show you what it's all about, and rip one of these FPV racing drones at over 100 miles per hour. So, let's cut out to the field and have some fun in 3, 2, 1, boop! Rightio, out here in the field. Now it's for the good stuff, the fun stuff. Let's show you guys some HD footage, rip it around. We've got the 5S version, the 4S version, show you just how much fun these can be. All right, let's do it.
That's a badass little machine. 117 mile an hour. 117 mile an hour. 117 mile an hour. Yip, 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 yip.